Welcome to the More Life, Less Drama podcast with mindset expert and master executive coach, Prue, who will teach you how to finish your first goal and then every goal using her simple, proven formula. If you're ready to live more life, have more fun, and reach your potential with less drama, you're in the right place.
Hello, More Life, Less Drama family. How are you today? Have you ever achieved something and been left with that feeling of really underwhelmed? You thought when you started whatever it was that you'd get to that place and you'd feel fantastic and amazing and incredible and, like super woman material. Yet you just don't. You sort of left going, is that it? Is that all this hard work and effort that I put into this goal got me? And you sort of think, what's the point? What's the point of going hard towards a goal when really it's not that good in the end at all? So in this episode of More Life, Less Drama, we are going to discuss and overcome the idea that it's better over there. The title of this episode is You've Reached Your Peak, Now What? And I want to help you understand how not to get to the place where you've worked hard for your goal and you feel underwhelmed at what you're left with when you've achieved it. Because where is that place over there? That magical place in the distance that you're striving for? Because really, what's happening is that you've not actually spent time yet to understand what and who you will be on the other side of success. I'm talking about the other side of achieving success and how you will feel on the other side of that. So let's get into it. I'm going to start by sharing a story. And it's a story about a friend who wanted to buy a house. It is a big deal to buy a house. As you know, in this economy, it is a big deal to buy a house. This woman, she's single, she has her own business, and she's had a life filled with, a lot of turmoil and triumph. And I remember having a conversation with her after she had purchased the house and it was hers. And she said something that was like, it's not the exact words, but she said something like, it feels a little bit underwhelming. I thought it was going to be better. And that's what I'm talking about. It's life and business as usual when you achieve anything. And the thing is, if you knew how much hustle and grind she had to go through to make that purchase happen, you'd expect that she was going to be jumping around with happiness and joy, really just feeling all the great feelings that she's feeling of achieving that huge milestone that she achieved all by herself. And the truth was, from all that effort and all that work, the emotional roller coaster she went on throughout that whole journey, the actual crossing of the finish line was not what she was expecting, because it literally landed flat. It was like a whole lot of nothing. That's basically how she described it. She's like, really? This is it? And I remember having the discussion with her and we're like, what were we expecting? What were you expecting on the other side? And honestly, she couldn't answer. And I've done the same thing in my own life. I couldn't answer what I was actually expecting on the other side of success, but had this unwritten expectation of what it's going to be like. So the thing is, we think it's much better over there, and therefore we can be a little bit disappointed when it's not. And what happens when it's not? When that happens, you are less likely to go after something else. Because you're like, well, that was underwhelming. Why would I even bother putting myself through all that pain for nothing? And look, I just want to say that it is great to achieve goals. It is really fantastic. It is my thing. I want people to achieve all the things that they set their mind to. And I'm not saying it's not great to achieve your goals, because, that would be doing me and my business an injustice, because I'm like, achieve your goals, people. It's the thing that is tapping you on the shoulder saying, let's do this. And the truth of the matter is, it is great to achieve goals, But we get kneecapped when the feelings don't match the ideals or something deep in our brain that we thought was going to happen. And like I said, we haven't actually articulated that it's going to happen, but we just think it's magically going to be better over there. So I'm going to throw some examples at you. You think it will be better when you're skinnier. Oh my God, how many times have I heard this? You think you'll be happier when you buy that new handbag or that new pair of boots. You think you'll feel worthy when you're married, you have a new job, you reach a certain income in your career or an income level. You think you'll be worthy. And the answer is no, no, no. Like seriously, you will not feel any different if you don't change something first. Things will be different for sure. Like yeah, you'll have more money when you reach a certain income level. That is certain. That's just math. But the feeling thing is a whole different thing altogether. And that's what I want to focus on today. So let's use the skinnier example because it is such a prolific example I see in the world all too often. People hate their bodies. They think if their body was different, that they will feel better about themselves. And it does not always happen like that. I'm not saying it doesn't happen like that sometimes. Sometimes it does. But most of the time, it doesn't happen like that. I actually know heaps of people that have had gastric bypass surgery over the last, 5 years. And there are such varying results in the feelings that they feel once they've achieved their goal weight or whatever the look that they're after. But this one person said to me, after they'd lost half of their body weight, okay, that's a huge achievement in itself, half of their body weight they had lost. They used to say to me, I've literally lost all of you. And I'm like, wow, that's incredible. And it is. They looked in the mirror and they said, I don't even recognize myself anymore. Who am I? And they also looked in the mirror and they're like, okay, I've lost weight and there is so much more about me that I want to change. What about this part and this part and this bit of skin and these dark patches and all this sort of stuff came out of their mouth that was from their mind. So they didn't even recognize themselves. And the truth was they were not happier at half the weight, even though that was the story that they were telling themselves going into this procedure and into this big, huge change. They said they're going to be happier when they're half their size. In fact, the loss of the weight made them feel confused about themselves. And they simply found more things that they needed to change that could make them happy, potentially. So they got to the point where they're like, this is going to make me happy. Losing 65 kilos, it's going to make me happy if I do that. They do that. They're like, oh, hold on. I'm not feeling as happy as I thought. So what else do I need to change? Oh, I might be able to have this surgery to do this. Or maybe I need to, work out 5 times a week, to tone my muscles. Then I'll be happy. But in this case, the real problem was how they thought about themselves and not the weight itself. So they reached their peak. Now what? They had that feeling. Doesn't feel good here either. And it's true. It's the same thinking that they had earlier. They didn't actually change any of their thinking about themselves and their body and their identity and their self-worth. And unfortunately, in this case, what happened was because they didn't change their thinking and their beliefs about themselves, they continued with the same actions and the same self-sabotaging behaviours. And over time, that led to the weight coming back on. And they are still unhappy. So let's think about my friend now who purchased the house. It wasn't that she wasn't grateful for what she had achieved, because it was far from that. She was so grateful for her achievements and all the work she put in. She was. But she just was left with that feeling of like, oh, that's a bit underwhelming. But it's the same thing. Not exactly the same level, because this person was super grateful for the achievements and the things that she did to get to where she was. Like, she was definitely a different person throughout that process, but she was still left with that underwhelming feeling. So when I'm thinking about this topic, and believe me, I think about it a lot because it's a problem that I love to solve for people. And I've come to my own conclusions as to why this happens. So the theory is many people who are struggling internally seek an outside tangible result to focus on to prove to themselves that they are worthy. Okay? It happens all the time. It's human nature, really. It's not something that is wrong with you if you do that, for sure. Like, I'm not putting any judgment on anybody for wanting to achieve anything. Sometimes it's the thing that kickstarts you into the success that you want. Yet, if you don't solve for those problems, like the root cause problems of the negative feelings that maybe got you to start the goal, it's like, think of the stick and the carrot, okay? So most people start because they've got a stick slapping them on the ass, going, come on, move along, move along, move along. It's the pain of what they want to get away from. But if you don't solve for that pain throughout the journey, you're not going to ever get to a point where the carrot is going to be the inspiration to keep going. You're going to always need the pain before you make any decisions or take any different actions to get a different result. So wherever they go, they will feel the same. So if you don't solve for the problem, the root cause of your negativity, whether it just be how you think about yourself, then you'll rock up at the next level with all those same problems. Similarly, for those people who have an unmet emotional need, those people will seek out to prove to themselves that they can do all the things. And it's not to get outside validation or anything, it's just for themselves. But if they're feeling like they've got something that is unmet emotionally, they'll head out and they'll prove that they can do these things. Yet they will still feel underwhelmed at their achievements because really what they're hoping for is that this thing will be the thing that will fulfill that need. And of course, it doesn't, because they haven't decided that that is the thing. So what does? And it is so simple. I just said it in that last sentence. It's a decision. That's it. A decision ahead of time to say, I will achieve this goal and I will feel proud of myself for doing it. And it's not the thing that defines me as a person or creates my worthiness. I'm worthy just as I am. This goal is part of my evolution and I'm always evolving. That's what you decide ahead of time. As I say that sentence, I actually feel really unattached to the goal. I'll insert that goal into that statement somewhere. But I feel really unattached to the goal that as something that forms my identity as a person, as a human being. Because if I do it or don't do it, I am 100% worthy. That's where I want you to get to. If I lose the weight or don't lose the weight, I am 100% worthy. I love myself no matter what. That's the place where you want to be before you achieve or even start achieving your goals. This is the difference, my friends. This is the difference between you getting to the end of your goal, whether it be a 7-day goal, a 4-week goal, a 4-year goal, who knows, and feeling underwhelmed and then stopping and not doing any more. So imagine if my friend loved her body before having surgery, loved herself as a person and didn't just value what she looked like as something that was going to create her worthiness in the world. I believe the outcome would be so much different, because actually that's what I've seen in other cases. Like I said, people have had different and varying results, and that's the difference. It's their mindset going into it. So imagine if my other friend who bought her house had decided ahead of time that she was capable. The underwhelming feeling might not have been so strong, and she could have enjoyed it a little bit more, I suppose. Imagine if you told yourself that you are exactly where you're meant to be, in exactly the right body and the right circumstances, and you're okay with it all. That's where I want you to get to. So as you strive for your goals, it becomes less about your identity, in the eyes of others especially, and more about who you're becoming in your own eyes. Slight difference, but massive difference. I often coach so many of my clients to stay exactly where they are because it allows us to look out for the real problems. When I'm like, no, you're not changing jobs just yet. You've got to stay there until we figure out what's going on. And I do that when it's safe and convenient to do that, for sure. But we don't change anything. And we just like seek out the problems in our own minds internally to solve them first. And believe me, there is a lot of resistance when I say this to some clients. But for those people that have stayed the course, and people listening to this will know who they are and who have done the work, once they do decide to change their circumstances, like all the things on the outside, things actually do change, okay? Things are better. They end up feeling better in the place, and because they didn't drag all their shitty thoughts with them, they feel better in their new place. Because what often happens is we take ourselves wherever we go. And so you can have everything and still be unhappy, and you can have nothing and still be happy. So that's the theory. It's like, stay where you are, figure out all those shitty thoughts that are making you feel a certain way, because they're all coming from inside your own mind. Solve for that first, and then make a decision to achieve something different or move or change circumstances. So how do you make a decision about this? I'm just going to step it out really quickly. So firstly, you want to make a decision for and from your future, not as you are right now. Because if you're making decisions in all the negativity that you've got right now, you are likely going to make the wrong decision. You have to think about who you will be once you complete the goal. Think about that. Spend time there. This is the difference between people who are successful and who are not successful. Successful people spend time thinking about the future, thinking about who they will be. They don't rush over this process, I promise you. So let's go back to the person that bought the house. Once you buy the house, who will you be as a person who runs and owns a house, that manages its upkeep and all the mortgage payments? Okay, just think about that. Think about who you will be. If you've rented in the past and then you have stepped into becoming a house owner, like, think about the transition, how the mindset is different. I just know this because I see how people treat houses when they're not their own, and we treat our houses differently when we own them. It is just evidence out in the world. You become committed. You are a person that runs a house now, so you are committed, which, being committed is a great attribute to start any goal process. Then you might be a person that when you own a house, you're thinking about your house a lot. You're like, what would serve it? And you might go, right, it needs insurance. I'm going to get the best insurance possible. So you might go on the hunt for really great insurance to keep your investment safe, right? So therefore you are proactive. And if you stepped into proactive at the very beginning of your goal, things would be different. Then once you own the house, you're always cleaning it. You make sure you spend time and effort to clean the house. You get all the mildew out of the shower, otherwise it builds up. And you pay somebody to come in and spray for termites. That's you being nurturing. It's not about that hustle and hoping things will work out, which is where you currently could be when you're thinking about wanting to buy a house or going through a process. It can be feeling like, it feels like out of my control and a lot of hustle energy. Instead, you're going into it, you're like, I'm committed, I'm proactive, I'm nurturing. How will those three things make you show up differently throughout the process of getting the house? So instead, you're like, it's just done. I'm committed, I'm proactive, I'm nurturing, and living into those experiences. That is the place where you make decisions from. And look, if the first house doesn't happen, the person that is committed and proactive and nurturing, well, guess what? You will stay in that elevated place and look for another opportunity. Losing that first house or that opportunity of the first house is not going to make you stop and do nothing. You'll just keep going until it's done. So once you get to a place where you have succeeded, there is no time, therefore, to dwell on a feeling of underwhelm. It's just not going to come up because you have stepped into the person that you needed to be from the very beginning. And you're like, This is just part of the journey. And so once you get to the house, you're not like, oh, that was underwhelming. You're like, great, what's next? Because you have become that person ahead of time. So, my friends, think about what you are striving for and think about who you will need to be to achieve that goal, and be that person now. There's a saying out in the dating world that I stumbled across, and it says, make a list, become the list. And I love it. I think it's just so simple. It is so true. If you want somebody that is loving and caring and kind and affectionate, and you're not those things, the first step is to become those things. And the same theory applies to any decision and goal that you want to make. Okay? Easy. So easy. Make the list, become the list. Another thing that could be helpful is looking at past experiences. So look at both your failures and your achievements and ask the question, what was hard about that? Like really ask and just sit in it. What was I doing, thinking and feeling that made it harder than it needed to be? Because as humans, we tend to do that. Think about the goal you have achieved. Think about what got you there that felt hard, and just decide, another decision, to eliminate that. If you're like doing all this extra stuff and hustle and like really running around, like having that real, gotta do all this stuff energy, eliminate that. Say to yourself, I'm not going to do that this time. What can I do differently? And this is the last thing. When you're making decisions about how to feel ahead of time, I don't want you to create the expectation of amazing, extraordinary, pumped, all those feelings that are hyped up words that we're supposed to feel, that maybe you've seen out in the world that you are meant to feel a certain way. Because the truth is, as you've discovered along this conversation, it may not actually happen to that extent. It can be a little bit less impactful than you want it to be, okay? And I don't want to sound like a buzzkill. I just know that those feelings are not particularly helpful. Like I've been in rooms where they really pump you up and get you into that high energy, and great when you're there, but when it's not really your personality, it's not really helpful, honestly. Like I've walked out of there and I've spent so much time wondering, why can't I stay there? What's going on? It's like, oh, that's right. It's not actually me. Like part of my personality is not that hyped up, type of language and expectations and feelings and all that sort of stuff. Look, if that is you, fantastic, use it. But I'm just saying, if you're somebody that is a little bit more low key and a bit more practical, like me, those words don't, and those feelings are not helpful to strive for because they feel so far off from who you are right now. So be more practical. And I want you to strive for things like proud. That is something that really works well for me and my clients. Accomplished is another one. Capable, certain. These are more realistic and create sustainability in your own goal setting for sure. So try them on instead. Don't always go for those real hyped up words and language and feelings. And I just want to share this last thing with you because I'm all about realistic expectations, okay? And the truth is, not one thing you do is it, like the thing. No, that's not going to happen. I've heard so many people who are successful say that when they believed that, like because they did believe that, they were told that and they believed that, they thought, this is my one thing that I'm going to achieve and it's going to change my world and might change my life and I'm going to be happy forever. The opposite effect actually happens. And they slide into this confusion and this unfulfillment. Some people have had their worst years after a real elevated or like at the height of their success. I've heard so many people. I listen to a lot of podcasts with successful people and that happens a lot. They think they get to that place and then they're going to be just happy forever. And what happens is they're like, oh, that underwhelm happens and they're like, oh, geez. It actually spirals them into thoughts like, well, I've reached my peak at 25. Now what? Like it's just all downhill from here, and they get really depressed about it and they have their worst years in the coming years after their success. I don't want that to happen to you. So it's not just one thing, okay? I want you to remind yourself ahead of time that this is just one part of your evolution and your life path. Like really tell yourself this, because it's true. And although it's amazing to get there, to achieve success and achieve your goal, it's not the only place to go. There's places beyond that to go. So just really allow space to tell yourself these things. And the reason I want to tell you that is because if you think it's better somewhere else, you end up solving for the wrong problems. And once you get to that place and that lack of fantastic feelings that you were striving for, it just stops you from moving forward to the next place. And I'm all about small steps to create big changes. That is my motto. It's impossible just to stop at one thing that will create the life you desire. You're just not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, and then that's it. It's a process. We're always living into it. We are always evolving. We are changing all the time, and we have to understand that. And I just don't want you to get crushed by disappointment on the first go. So if you join my course, the Finishers Club, and you're like, achieve the first goal, and then you sort of feel like a little bit disappointed in how you're feeling, you're not going to actually show up and do it all again. You won't have any pull or drive to do it again because you'll be like, oh, well, that was just a waste of time. So that is the point, okay? So I want you to take small, consistent steps to create the life that you want. And as reaching goals is all about problem solving, as I've said previously, this is just yet another problem I have solved for you in advance that's going to prevent you from feeling underwhelmed and quitting in the future. So you're welcome. Okay, my friend, I know that this was helpful. It's always helpful when I share some of the insights of what's going on in your mind without you even knowing it. And I want you to let me know what your thoughts are about this topic. And if you've experienced this yourself, you can send me an email or text message, however you'd like. Otherwise, that's it from me, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening to More Life, Less Drama. If you're ready to finish your goals, Prue invites you to join her inside the Finishers Club, where you will learn how to finish your first intentional goal, the hardest part, then complete every goal you set your mind to using her simple formula. Visit head-coach.com.au to get started today.